This one? Hello, Namaskar. Good evening. Let me first congratulate Bharati for having organized these very interesting set of lectures on a varied number of topics. And let me also thank them for giving me this wonderful opportunity and platform to share some of my thoughts on Ayurveda. COVID-19 is a pandemic which has literally brought the world to a standstill, even as countries are pooling the resources to fight the infection. One of the most important resources India has is the Ayush sector, of which Ayurveda is plays a very important role. There is a lot of growing interest and attention in exploring the possible use of Ayurveda and the other Ayush systems to fight in the management of COVID. At the same time, it's very important to have clarity of thought on how best to use these systems to their full potential to serve the public. So it is very important to know why, how and where Ayurveda differs from the mainstream medicine, which is allopathy. So this is going to be the topic of my lecture today. But before I go on, let us refresh our memories on some basic information. We all know that medical systems are founded on basic sciences. No medical system, be it allopathy or Ayurveda, they are all applied sciences. And they are based on basic sciences. And what do the basic sciences provide? They provide concepts, theories and methodologies to understand the biological system, to understand the physiology and pathophysiology, to explain and interpret diseases, and provide techniques for diagnosis and treatment. More importantly, the basic sciences also provide the worldview, or in other words, it's called understanding of the reality. Now let us look at some of the basic, very fundamental factors which are important for clinical medicine. So all clinical medicine, be it Ayurveda, Allopathy, Homeopathy, Siddha, Unani, they all begin with diagnosis and end with treatment, literally. So diagnosis and treatment plays a major role, very important role in all clinical medicine. Treatment defines diagnosis, and diagnosis is dependent on how the human system is understood. If the human system is understood in terms of molecules and cells and tissues, diagnosis will speak the same language, and treatment will be in sync with the language spoken by the diagnosis. But we all know that the human system is a very complex system. So what would be the reason that a particular system of medicine understands it the way it understands? So for example, if you take the allopathic system of medicine, it understands the human system based on cells, molecules, proteins, genes, etc. So the reason for that is what you see here, the understanding of reality by the basic sciences. So the basic science which has contributed to the understanding and development of any stream of a particular stream of medicine has a worldview, or has a viewpoint of how it wants to understand, look at perceive the reality. So this actually forms the basis of how the human system is also understood. For example, let us look at how what kind of worldview has affected the way the allopathic medicine and modern biology to understand the biological systems the way they have understood. physics is one of the basic sciences which has contributed extensively to allopathic system of medicine. So here in the slide you see the various disciplines in physics: mechanics, fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, electricity and magnetism, sound and light, quantum physics, and nuclear radiation. You see that there are concepts from these disciplines which have been used by allopathic system of medicine to understand or to explain the biological, explain how the human system works. So for example, if you take mechanics, right, the concept of energy and power has been used to understand how muscles work, and the technological input has been the development of prosthetics. Similarly, if you look at the quantum physics, MR imaging, MRI scanners are all application of quantum physics. But a more fundamental contribution of physics is its perspective on reality and worldview. We all know that physics has two major branches. One is the quantum physics, the other is the classical or Newtonian physics. The worldview that has been used by modern medicine is that of Newton physics, or which is called classical physics. So what does the Newtonian worldview say? It looks at the world as having been made of building blocks, and this has directly affected the way a biological system is looked at. So these are some of the crucial points in the classical worldview. So reality is made of material objects. Larger objects can be reduced to smaller ones. Objects behave in a deterministic way. In fact, classical physics is also known as deterministic physics, and physical laws govern them. Now, of these points, the second point, this highlighted one, plays a very important role. Larger objects can be reduced to smaller ones. So this is a model that we are all familiar with, where atom is the fundamental building block, and atoms make molecules, then you have organelles, then you have cells, tissues, organ system, and then the entire organism. So there is a clear structural hierarchy that you see here in this model, and this is also called a reductionistic viewpoint, because here the entire organism, which is the human system, is reduced to its fundamental building blocks. The focus here is majorly on structures. So modern medicine follows a structural reductionism, whereby a complex system is understood as sum of its parts. So the structural viewpoint is reflected in everything that modern medicine does, be it diagnosis, be it treatment, be it even diet and nutrition. So there is a methodological reductionism which pervades and predominates modern medicine. There are definite advantages of reductionism. It leads to better understanding of the components and processes involved at the cellular level. It can identify the malfunctioning component and repair it, and it has given it very targeted therapies, some of which are very, very successful and effective. Now, with this background information, let me shift gear and go on to talk about Ayurveda, which is the science of life. Ayurveda, we all know, is indigenous to not only India but to the entire Indian subcontinent. It has uninterrupted medical practices going back to about 5,000 years. This is a very conservative estimate of the time period. It is one of the most systematically documented medical systems in the world, and it is a theory-based practice. So Ayurveda has a theoretical framework using which its practices and the rationale for the practices can be explained in a scientific manner. It uses the same theoretical framework to also strategize treatment for known, unknown, and new diseases. So Ayurveda, as I said, and as we all know, is the science of life or knowledge of life, and because it deals with life, it deals with both health and disease. When it talks about health, it talks about preventive and promotive health, and when it talks about disease, it talks about curative, treating a disease. It is generally presumed that prevention is one of the strong points of Ayurveda. There is no doubt about it. It definitely is one of the major strength of Ayurveda. But treatment is also equally a strength of Ayurveda. The treatment in Ayurveda is very comprehensive and very, very effective as well. So let us go back to this slide again, which just to remind ourselves that all medical systems, including Ayurveda, are applied sciences, and they are founded on basic science. Right? So we have already seen that physics, the role physics has played in the development of modern medicine. So does Ayurveda have anything similar? Yes, indeed, Ayurveda, the theoretical framework and the conceptual basis of Ayurveda has been fashioned using information from darshanas. So what are darshana? Darshana literally means to see, to view, to have an insight. In fact, the word theory, which is from the Greek word theoria, also means the same. So darshana offers theories and concepts on physical and non-physical realities, the creation of universe, life and matter, what are the constituents of physical matter, the relationship between mind, body and consciousness, the underlying principles of Ayurveda, namely Tridoshas and Panchamahabhutas, transformation of substances to form new products, concepts of measurements like time, weight and length, and methodologies for scientific study and analysis. All these are provided by, taken from darshanas. And there are 6 darshanas which Ayurveda has used: Sankhya, Nyaya, Vaiseshika, Mimamsa, Yoga and Uttara Mimamsa. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I would like to give a flavor of the kind of information these darshanas have and how Ayurveda has used them. So for example, if you take Sankhya, it talks about origin of universe and life and evolution of matter. And this has been used in Ayurveda to understand the relationship between mind, body and consciousness, the causality, the Tridosha and Saptadhatu. Saptadhatu refers to the tissue elements. All these form the basis of Ayurvedic understanding, not only understanding of health but also management of health and disease. Nyaya Darshana is a very interesting darshana. It talks about deductive reasoning and logical inference, and it offers 16 methods of scientific inquiry. These have been used by Ayurveda to diagnose and also for nomenclature of known and unknown diseases and herbs. Vaiseshika is yet another very interesting darshana. It has a concept of Anu, which is generally understood as being equivalent to atom. The concept is similar, but it's not exactly the same as atom as understood in physics. And Vaiseshika talks about classification and property of matter. It talks about formation of new substances and heat and transformation. These have been used by Ayurveda to understand the physical body, herbs, drugs, drug combinations and so on. Now, Mimamsa offers logical decision support system for validating and interpreting text. This have also been used by Ayurveda to work out the contradictions between different texts. Yoga, I think I don't have to say anything about it because it's quite evident how Ayurveda would have used information from yoga. Uttara Mimamsa has played a very important role in the way Ayurveda has conceptualized the human system. Because Uttara Mimamsa talks about interconnectedness and consciousness, and the whole concept of humans as an indivisible whole has been taken from Uttara Mimamsa by Ayurveda. So going back to this slide, which shows the connection between or the important role of the world view and how it affects how the human system is understood, and which in turn affects diagnosis and treatment. Let us see what kind of worldview was adopted by Ayurveda. So Ayurveda has followed the Vedic worldview, which talks about interconnectedness. So it says that nature exists as a continuum, where the universe is a dynamic web of interconnected and inseparable entities in a dynamic relationship. Now this is very different to this building block model of a worldview which has been proposed by classical physics and which has been adopted by modern medicine and biology to understand biological systems. Now here the worldview adopted by Ayurveda, which talks about interconnectedness, has helped Ayurveda conceptualize the human system as a seamless interconnected whole. So Ayurveda here talks about 4 domains. So it talks about a structural domain, it talks about a physiological domain, it talks about a psychological domain, and it talks about the subtle domain of consciousness. Now each of these domains is they are intraconnected. So for example, if you look at the structural domain, it is networked through channels which are called srotas in Ayurveda, and the physiological domain it is networked through parameters defined under Vata, Pitta and Kapha. I will be talking about this a bit later. And the psychological domain is networked using psychological parameters defined by Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. And the very subtle domain of consciousness is understood by the concept of Panchakoshas. It talks about different levels of awareness which are all connected with each other. So each of these 4 domains is intraconnected, but what is interesting is these areas of overlap that you see in the picture here. So there are parameters which connect these domains, making the entire human system as an interconnected whole. Now, although I am not going to go into the details of this, I would like you all to, or I would like to draw your attention to this very interesting connection between the gross structural domain and the very subtle domain of consciousness. So you see that the first level of awareness, which is the physical body, it acts as the connecting part between the gross structural domain and the very subtle domain of consciousness. And this is, you can see the difference in these 2 models. So this is a structural hierarchical model adopted by modern medicine based on the Newtonian worldview, and this is a model adopted by Ayurveda based on the Vedic worldview of interconnectedness. So Ayurveda says that we are seamlessly mind, body and soul. And Ayurveda goes on to say that from the core of our being to the vast expanse of the universe, we exist as one. The whole universe, Ayurveda very elegantly says, is expansion of one's consciousness. So now let us get down to the nitty-gritty details of how Ayurveda would work at a pragmatic level. So when I say pragmatic level, what I mean is how it handles health and disease. So for this, Ayurveda has classified the human system into 2 broad categories. One is gross, the other is subtle. And the gross aspect of the human body has further subclassifications. So it talks about classification based on structure. So the word that you see in the bracket is in Sanskrit, the terminology used in Ayurveda, dhatu. So the structural classification deals with the physical aspect of the body. Then Ayurveda has a functional classification defined by dosha, and this deals with the physiological and psychological aspect of the body. Of course, when I say physiological, physical is part and parcel of the physiological aspect. And then Ayurveda also has a system-wise or srotas based classification, which deals with physical, physiological and psychological aspects of the body. Then coming to the subtle aspect, it talks about levels of awareness, and this deals with the psychological and realms of awareness. Very subtle, these are very subtle aspects in the body. Now let me focus on, talk a bit about the functional classification, because this runs as an undercurrent to the entire understanding of health and disease in Ayurveda. Not only that, the management of health and disease in Ayurveda. So when you say functions, there are many parameters which contribute to a function. So it is not a single parameter concept. So structures play a very important role. In fact, structures play the most important role, because for a function to manifest, there has to be a structure, right? So you can see the heart beating here, and the function of movement in the heart is seen because of the physical structure of the heart there. So structure, biochemistry, and I have listed a number of activities. There are many more activities which I have not listed here. All these put together results in a function. So a function can be called, we can say, a emergent property. Now what is also very interesting here is structure and biochemistry, which form the major focus of understanding the biological system in modern medicine. They are inbuilt, they are part of the functions. So when you have a system as complicated, as complex as the human system, there has to be some way to classify the system so that it is easy to handle. We have seen how modern medicine has classified the human system. It has classified based on structures. Now Ayurveda has a functional classification, so for which it has identified 3 functions: movement, metabolism and growth. And in the context of Ayurveda, these are called Vata, Pitta and Kapha. So for convenience, I am going to refer to these as VP and K. So without going into the nitty-gritty details of this classification, let me quickly tell you all the kind of concepts, the kind of aspects or parameters which comes under these Vata, Pitta and Kapha. All movements in body and mind comes under Vata. So one thing I would like to remind you all is that Ayurveda does not de-link body and mind. Whether it is an understanding of health or management of health, or understanding of disease or management of disease, body and mind is always considered as one cohesive unit. So all movements in body and mind comes under Vata. So it could be a gross movement like this, or it could be a subtle movement like this. You see the movement of heart and the movement of blood inside the heart. Here you see the movement of molecules in and out of cell membrane. It's a very subtle movement. And here you see a very, very subtle movement of thoughts. So all movements from gross to subtle comes under Vata. And all metabolic processes, be it digestion and transformation at the physical and physiological level, or at the mental level, or at the psychological level, it comes under Pitta. And pH and temperature are 2 defining parameters under Pitta. Now I would like to reiterate this point that although all the information is given in English, the information is basically, they are all taken from classical Ayurvedic texts. But for the fact that the terminologies are in English, the information is from classical Ayurvedic texts. Kapha deals with physical growth and support. It is responsible for structural basis, stability. So when I say stability, it's not only the physical and physiological stability, but it's also stability of thoughts, stability of character, stability of behavior. So you see how Ayurveda has brought in the psychological aspect as well in Vata, Pitta and Kapha. So here this picture shows you the growth of a fetus. Now there is a physical growth here and it comes under Kapha. So the psychophysiological functions are broadly classified under Vata, Pitta and Kapha. So it seems like a very broad based classification, but there are subtypes as well. So each of these of BP and K are classified into 5 subtypes each. So between these 15 sub-classifications, all psychophysiological functions can be accounted for. There are no psychophysiological functions which would come outside the purview of this classification. So a very notable feature in this model adopted by Ayurveda is absence of hierarchy. So here you see this model of adopted by modern medicine. So you see a clear hierarchy there. So at the fundamental level you see the atoms, then you go on to the next hierarchy, structural hierarchy level, and then you see molecules, then as you move up you see the other structures. So there is a very clear hierarchy there. But in Ayurveda there is no hierarchy. So for example, if you look at this growth of a fetus, there is a physical growth, right? And there is a movement, there is also metabolism and transformation. And all these occur at the same time, they occur simultaneously. So which is what I mean by telling there is absence of hierarchy. The other important factor is whether you look at the cell or at the entire human organism, these three functions, movement, metabolism and growth, you would find it at all levels of the structural hierarchy. Now, so VP and K encompass the entire psychophysiological functions. And what has made this theory of VPK? So in fact, the concept of Vata, Pitta and Kapha is actually a theory of Vata, Pitta and Kapha. You may remember that right in the beginning of this lecture, I said that Ayurveda is a theory-based system. So there are many theories in Ayurveda, and the theory of Vata, Pitta and Kapha is one of them. And so this theory has been successfully translated into practical use by this second point here. So where you see that V, P and K are characterized by parameters which are biophysical, chemical, physiological and psychological in nature. So these are some of the parameters. You can see that the biophysical parameters are dryness, fluidity, adhesivity, size, stiffness, viscosity, weight, elasticity, roughness. Now you don't have to be a scientist to know that change in these parameters will affect movement. For example, if the fluidity increases, then it increases the movement, right? And pH and temperature, even according to modern science, they play a very important role in metabolism and transformation. And you can see that there are also psychological parameters which comes under this category classification of Vata, Pitta and Kapha. Now what is interesting is how these parameters are connected with each other. Now for example, if you take the parameter dryness, when there is a change in this parameter, there are changes in other parameters which are connected to this parameter. So for example, when dryness changes, there are changes in movement, temperature, fluidity, heaviness, lubrication, roughness and so on. These are just some parameters that I have shown. In fact, what can be done is you can draw a network of these parameters defined under Vata, Pitta and Kapha. So V1 to V7 are denote parameters under Vata, P1 to P7 under Pitta and K1 to K7 under Kapha. So all these parameters are connected with each other. So this is like a network, and you can see this picture here of network. This is taken from systems biology. I will be saying a few words about the systems biology towards the end of my lecture. So this network here is a network of genes, and here the network that you see here is the network of properties. Majority of them are biophysical properties defined by Vata, Pitta and Kapha. You can see the similarity between these two networks. The only difference is that these circles, which are called nodes in a network, the nodes denote different things. Here it denotes gene and here it denotes biophysical properties. So the job of the Ayurvedic Vaidya is to bring this network back to balance. So when this network is in balance, it denotes health, and disease is a system perturbation in Ayurveda. Now, how is this theory of Vata, Pitta and Kapha being translated to clinical practice? The ancient Ayurvedic acharyas have done it in a very clever way. So just because they have used Vata, Pitta and Kapha to understand the human system, they have used the same terminology or the same classification for all factors which play a role in health and disease. So for example, food environment and lifestyle activities play a very important role in health and disease. Now we are going through COVID pandemic, and I do not have to impress on you all the importance, the role environment plays in this pandemic. Food, which is medicinal plants and edible plants, animals and food ingredients, these are part of our diet. And medicinal plants, metals, minerals and animals, which are all used for also making medicines, and environment, season, activities and clinical symptoms all speak the same language of VP and K. So in fact, Vata, Pitta and Kapha forms a common. Let us take a couple of quick examples. Let's take pain. If it is a shifting pain, so shifting pain is a very typical feature in chikungunya. If it is a shifting pain, then it is a Vata related pain. If there is an association of burning sensation, it is Pitta associated. If it is a heavy and dull pain, then it is Kapha associated. Let us take another example, fever. If it is a fluctuating fever, the temperature fluctuates as the day progresses, something typical of malaria, it is a Vata Jvara. If the patient complains of a burning sensation in the eye and bitter taste in the mouth, then it is Pitta related fever. If the patient has wet cough and cold, then it is on low grade fever, then it's a Kapha related fever. So all clinical symptoms comes under the classification of Vata, Pitta and Kapha. There are no clinical symptoms which comes outside the purview of this classification. Whether it is an autoimmune disease or whether it is chikungunya, swine flu, dengue, even COVID, all the clinical symptoms can be classified under Vata, Pitta and Kapha. So how is this theory used for diagnosing diseases, known diseases and unknown diseases in Ayurveda, which is what I would like to very quickly say here. So let us say that, let us assume that a patient is going to Ayurvedic Vaidya. The Vaidya is presented with the symptoms. That's what any doctor would be presented with, right? So the Vaidya looks at the symptoms, and of course, there are many other parameters that Ayurvedic Vaidya would assess, but let me stick to the symptoms to keep the things simple here. So from the symptoms, they can understand, because the symptoms, remember, they are classified under Vata, Pitta and Kapha. So the symptoms gives the Vaidya, tells him or her which of the doshas or have gone out of balance. Now what I would like to point out here is the clinical symptoms are not mere clinical symptoms in Ayurveda. The clinical symptoms have a direct connect with the causative factors. Remember that the causative factor, the reason for a disease in Ayurveda is an imbalance in Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So that is the causative factor for disease in Ayurveda. So from the clinical symptoms, the Ayurvedic Vaidya can work out the cause of the disease, and they can even go further back. They can work out, they can understand or identify the diet and lifestyle activities which would have caused an imbalance in the dosha. So from the symptoms, the causative factors are worked out by the Ayurvedic Vaidya, and their treatment is given. So let me go back to this slide quickly. So let us say that from the clinical symptoms, the Vaidya diagnoses the disease as a Vata predominant disease. Then all factors which are shown here, which increase Vata, ought to be avoided. All factors which decrease Vata are used, be it in lifestyle activities or the environment or the food or the medicines. So this is the scientific rational basis of how a diagnosis is made and how the treatment is strategized. So let me also tell you that for all the diseases, the causative factor, what is called Nidana, is known in Ayurveda. There are no diseases which are idiopathic in Ayurveda, which means that there are no diseases for which causative factors are not known. Now, because causative factors are known, it becomes easy for Ayurveda to address the causative factors. So the Ayurvedic treatment actually addresses the causative factors in the diseases. So Vata, Pitta and Kapha provides the theoretical framework and conceptual framework for all the psychosomatic life processes. So the treatment is very comprehensive in Ayurveda. So there are physical interventions in the form of medicines, internal medicines and procedures like panchakarma and changes in the diet. And there are also non-pharmacological interventions in terms of lifestyle changes and also yoga, meditation and things like chanting of mantra. So there are many other concepts in Ayurveda which will find a resonance in some of the contemporary concepts coming up in a very big way in modern medicine. So Ayurveda talks of personalized treatment and health. It talks about preventive medicine. It talks about promotive health. It has a systems approach. It talks about circadian rhythm and health, mind and health, precision nutrition, therapeutic nutrition, sustainable medicine. This is a very big topic these days. Environmental and ecological health. All these are concepts, not only concepts in Ayurveda, but they also have been translated to practical realities in Ayurveda. They are in full use when Ayurvedic Vaidya strategizes the therapeutic treatment. So this picture brings out the big difference between Ayurveda and modern medicine. So here you see the picture of a forest, and from this height you can capture the landscape in its entirety. So from this height you get the entire picture, but you do not get the nitty-gritty details of what is there in the forest. Now this is a microscopic structure of one of the leaf in one of the tree in the forest. So from this viewpoint or standpoint, you can get the nuanced details about very subtle aspects of the structures, but you do not see the whole picture. So these are two different complementary ways of looking at the same system. So different heights gives you different views, which gives you different understanding and which leads to different terminologies. So this is why the terminologies used in Ayurveda and modern medicine are very different, because the height, the viewpoint of these two systems are very different, and as I have tried to convey to you all, the different viewpoints are because of the different world views adopted by them. So with this, let me quickly say a few words about systems biology, which is a very, very interesting discipline in modern biology, where it talks about emergent properties. Now, if you very carefully look at this picture here, you will see that at the level of atom, you do not see this feature of chemical bond. So chemical bond is a property that you see only at the level of molecule, not at the level of atom. So as you keep moving at the structural hierarchy, you will see that there are new properties which emerges at each level. You may ask, so what? Well, something very interesting occurs. For example, let us take a very small step from atom to molecule. So let us take the very simple example of water molecule. I am sure we all know that property of water is not equal to property of hydrogen plus property of oxygen. Hydrogen is a highly inflammable gas, whereas water is used to put out fire. Now let me take another example. Let us look at the boiling point of water, which we all know is 100 degrees centigrade. Look at the boiling point of hydrogen and oxygen. Boiling point of hydrogen is minus 252.8 degrees centigrade, and that of oxygen is minus 183 degrees centigrade. They simply do not add up to 100 degrees centigrade. In fact, they don't even come anywhere near 100 degrees centigrade. But we know that water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. So what is interesting is that the constituents, the components which actually makes up the next level in the structural hierarchy can only give you so much information about the next level. You cannot have a complete understanding of water molecule by understanding the components, individual properties of the components. So if the small step from atom to molecule can give you this kind of emerging complexity, one can only wonder what kind of complexity one can expect when we move from molecule to the entire organism. So when we talk of systems biology, they talk of the modern systems biology talk about the interactions between components and how these interactions actually gives rise to emergent properties, and how these emergent properties actually plays a very important role in functions. The modern systems biology talks about at the cellular level, they talk about the interaction between the cellular components. So they talk about interaction between genes or between proteins and or between small metabolites. These are called genomes, proteomes and metabolome. The systems approach that Ayurveda talks about is interaction at the level of the entire organism. It talks about interaction between the physical, physiological, psychological and the subtle domain of consciousness, and within each domain of the kapha. And I have shown, you all have seen how these parameters under vata, pitta, kapha or can be depicted as a network, and how these network defines the interactions between these parameters. So just to summarize the fundamental differences between allopathy and Ayurveda, one talks about structural reductionism, the other talks about functional holism. One simplifies complexity by reductionism, the other manages complexity by systems approach. One deals with predominantly with disease, the other deals with both health and disease. In allopathy, the preventive medicine is still at a very nascent stage, whereas preventive medicine and promotive health are very well developed and also translated into practical terms, practical applications. The diagnosis in allopathy is predominantly structure based, and that in Ayurveda is predominantly function based. And the treatment in allopathy is in general it targets it offers the targeted mechanical interventions, and the approach in Ayurveda is a comprehensive approach encompassing physical, physiological as well as psychological domain. So let me end my lecture here by this wonderful dictum. May all be happy, may all be healthy, may all enjoy prosperity, may none suffer. And I think this is very important, and this is something that of this COVID pandemic at the very earliest. And I thank Vijnana Bharati once again for giving me this wonderful opportunity and platform to share some of my thoughts on Ayurveda. And I'll be very happy to take some questions. Yeah? Okay. So Sharvari has asked this question, that what is the relationship between Panchamahabhutas and Tridoshas. Well, this question, the answer to this question will require another session, complete session, because there are a lot of nuances, and it's a very, very deep philosophy which cannot be explained with answer in a couple of minutes. But let me quickly tell you that the doshas, vata, pitta and kapha, they are also linked to the Panchamahabhutas. So for example, Akasha is associated with vata, and then Prithvi and Aap are associated with kapha. So this concept of the theory of vata, pitta and kapha, they are connected not only with the physical, physiological and psychological domain, but they are directly connected to the Panchamahabhutas as well. So this is just to give an idea about the connection. Um, Thank you for your kind words and appreciation of the. Right. Okay, Sinopharm Research Center, the question is unwillingness to provide a rationale to the basis of the solution is in constant conflict with scientific methods. How can we change this? I think it's not fair to say that there is an unwillingness to provide a rationale. Not at all. It's not even a conflict. I think it is basic ignorance that about the science and rationale behind Ayurveda. Lot of people presume that Ayurveda is simply plants, jadi buti kind of thing. But what people don't realize is that there is a strong theoretical theory which links the use of plants to any disease. So for example, if ashwagandha is used for a particular disease, there is a theory which is used to justify the use of to select ashwagandha for that particular disease. So I think one of the major problem for Ayurvedic fraternity is that Indians, by virtue of being Indians, everybody feels that they know about Ayurveda. They don't realize that Ayurveda is a complete science, and it is as much as nuanced as modern medicine is. And so without knowing about the subject, it is unscientific to either pass judgment on the subject or to pose questions. So even to pose questions, one need to understand the subject, isn't it? So if a person wants to ask a question on quantum mechanics, right, the person should know about quantum mechanics, only then intelligent question can be asked. So it's the same with Ayurveda. Unless the person knows about Ayurveda, intelligent questions cannot be asked. So right now what is happening is people, without knowing about Ayurveda, or jumping to conclusions or asking questions. So this is one of the major problem in Ayurveda, and the problem is not the unwillingness of the Ayurvedic fraternity to subject itself to scientific scrutiny, because Ayurveda has the science behind it, and it can be explained very well, and I think the Ayurvedic fraternity would be more than happy to put themselves for scientific scrutiny, because they can stand the scientific scrutiny. So there is a question on Divyanshu Nikal. Do you believe that one day we can find a way to bring Ayurveda and allopathy together? Why not? And I think this is the right time to bring them together. We are going through a very, very difficult time. We are going through a pandemic, and this is the best time to bring the two systems together. Ultimately, the common meeting point is the patient, right? Allopathic system also wants to treat the patient, right? Ayurveda also wants to treat the patient. So there is a common point, there is a common interest, there is a common wish, and it need not be one day. I think right now is the time to bring the two systems together. There is a question from Siddhartha Dev. How efficient is Ayurveda system in treating emergencies? It is. It can treat emergencies. We all should remember that that Ayurveda has been in existence not for a couple of centuries, but it has been in existence for nearly 5,000 years. So emergencies would always have been there. And let us also remember that in those days, battles used to be fought regularly, right? And we also know that the Ayurvedic Vaidyas were always part of the army. So at the end of the day, when the fighting used to stop, the wounded soldiers used to be treated by the Ayurvedic Vaidyas, right? And the next day, the soldiers have to be up and functioning. They are not given time to recuperate, right? So, which means that emergency medicines which can act very quickly, be it wound healing or painkillers, all these were part and parcel of Ayurvedic arsenal in those days. It still is. There are still Vaidyas who can handle emergency conditions, but the ground reality is that in emergency condition, people generally go to the allopathic system, and which is very, very good at handling emergency conditions. So here there is no competition, but what I want to point out is that the limitation of the Vaidyas, Ayurvedic Vaidyas, should not be taken as the limitation of the science itself. So Ayurveda in theory can handle emergency situations, although in practice it doesn't happen in the current situation.
Sanjay Jain.
So Dr. Sanjay Jain says, if only one system remain, which would you prefer? See, every system has the plus and negative, right? So it's not that Ayurveda can handle everything, and it's not that the other Ayur systems also can handle everything. So there are strengths, very strong strengths of allopathic system, and it has its strong points and limitations. Similarly, Ayurveda has its strong points and limitations, and the human system is a very complex system. We would we need to take the best from each system, and in the interest of the patient and in the interest of the humanity, there should be all these systems which have the strengths. So the strengths of each system should be pulled together to help the suffering humanity. So this is my answer. So thank you very much, and
Stop streaming.
end streaming. Okay. Office. This one. I'll not do.